G'day and welcome everyone to another edition of the Cove podcast. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Chris Johnson, and today we're going to be talking about a concept you're probably already somewhat familiar with: trust. Joining me today on the show is the Commander of the 3rd Brigade, Brigadier Dave McCammon, a Health Officer from the 2nd Health Brigade, Captain Rachael O'Sullivan, and 2 junior NCOs from the 3rd Brigade, Corporal Connor Dawson and Lance Corporal Che Morris. And each of them are going to give us their insights and experience into trust. It might seem simple, but trust is the foundation for everything we do in our profession. It's not just trust between mates or colleagues or up and down the chain of command. We also have a very important relationship based on trust with the Australian people, the government, and our international community. Now, for those playing along at home, let me give you a definition of trust. Firstly, it's the firm belief in the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. And another definition says that it's a person or thing in which confidence is placed. Trust is not something we can teach. It's not something we can purchase, and it's certainly not something we can build quickly. But individual acts or institutional acts can destroy trust in a heartbeat. Let's hear first from Brigadier McCammon. Sir, thanks for your time and for coming on the Cove podcast. How do you go about, and your team go about, generating trust both up and down the chain from the brigade level?
Firstly, thanks for having me, Chris. Trust, it's important. It's the underpinning thing of everything we do. If people don't have trust in their leadership, if you don't have trust in your subordinates, it makes it incredibly difficult for us to achieve our mission. So it's critical we get it right. Trust is built around a range of things, but ultimately it's built over time.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's built through shared experiences, it's built through mutual opportunities, and it's something that comes from spending time together, understanding each other, being open, being honest, ensuring that we take the entire organisation on a journey and they understand why things are occurring in the brigade and in units, for example. So making sure soldiers understand the reason why we are doing things is incredibly important for their understanding as to what the organisation is doing.
Now, what about a health perspective? Captain O'Sullivan, Rach, what do you think about trust?
I guess, so being in the medical corps, we already inherit a level of trust, and that's between our non-clinical planners and our clinicians, and it does work both ways. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, I believe trust really underpins our relationship in everything we do daily business-wise within medical corps. So we trust our practitioners and their assessments, just as they then trust us for whatever reason it might be. Treatment, evacuation and such is delayed and it affects timings, etc.
When you say you trust us, you mean the GSOs?
Yeah, GSOs. We're now called health officers.
Okay.
So we were medical non-doctors, mm-hmm. medical officers, non-doctors, but yeah, now health officers.
Right. We'll move now to Lance Corporal Che Morris. Che, can you tell us a little bit about trust and what it means from your experience? I know that you can't teach it. How do you gain it? How do you grow it at sort of the section level?
From my perspective, it's always been about going through hard times with your mates or those that you work with, regardless, if you catch up after work or not, or if you just know each other just as straight colleagues, working together in hard times and picking up slack between each other, understanding each other is probably the best way I'll put it.
Yeah, sweet. Why is it important? I mean, in our line of work, why is trust important?
It's important because it's sort of like a safety net for everyone. They know that if something goes wrong on your end, you've always got someone there to give you a hand, back you up. And if something really goes downhill, you'll always be together, being able to push through regardless of the circumstance.
Yeah, those shared hardships are a really important baseline for trust to develop. I want to move now over to Corporal Connor Dawson.
The biggest way to generate trust is through your actions. So, I can sit here and tell my dudes, yep, I'm going to fight for us to go do some good training, or, knock us off earlier, we're doing nothing. But unless I actually show that I'm taking those steps to do those things that I'm saying I'm going to do, put your money where your mouth is type thing, that's probably the best way you can generate trust, through your actions, through your example that you're displaying, not through your words, because, anyone can get up and, play politician and say the right things, but unless they're doing the right things and getting the results and the guys are seeing that, they're not going to earn the trust otherwise.
So you've got new soldiers that turn up to the battalion all the time. They're out of training. They're fairly fresh. How do you get them from that point to a point where, you are leading these guys on operations and you're trusting each other with your lives?
Oh, I think you just need to throw them straight into the deep end. You don't beat around the bush. You tell them why they're here. We're infantry soldiers, we're riflemen. We're here to train to fight. You need to be prepared to kill. You need to be prepared to get wounded or die. You don't butter up or sugar up the training. You go, this is it. I'm here with you. We're all doing this together. You throw them into the hardship. You throw yourself into the hardship next to them. They see that, and that's how I think you build a team. That's how you build a section.
Okay. Talk to me about trust more broadly, outside of, trusting each other.
So in regards to the community?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's really important, right? When we put the uniform on and the community sees us, we want them to trust us. We need them to trust us. In fact, I believe for mission success, we have to have trust. Without it, really, we have nothing. Most health planners don't have a clinical background, but the health planners we see now, they're starting to have some sort of clinical background, which helps in the decision-making process. However, you might be on the other end of a phone, say, working for casualty regulation, and you're working through those 9-liners and mists, and it's your role as the health officer to then brief upwards recommendations, etc., based on those priorities that are coming in. So a priority comes in, and you have to trust that the person that is sending that 9-liner, that mist, that is exactly their intent for that casualty, and it is urgent, it is a priority one. Otherwise, sometimes, if you didn't have trust, your communication upwards isn't going to be overly clear. Yeah. So when a clinician is saying someone needs to exit the field immediately or be evacuated rearwards, that you have to trust that what they're saying is it needs to happen now. That will then enable you to make the following decisions to get that person out in the time frame that they've assessed that it needs to happen.
Yeah, it's quite a responsibility, I guess, shouldering this burden of trust. The moment we put on our uniforms, we are one of the most trusted professions in Australia for good reason.
I guess it's in the history as well, and the things that we've achieved over time, and our long-standing relationships with the community and with Australia. We want nothing but the best, and I believe wholeheartedly we try to achieve the best that we can every single day for the community, for Australia, for our nation. It's what we do. It's why we're here. It's why we wear the uniform.
I guess the uniform's like synonymous with trust.
It is. It honestly is.
It's important, as I said previously, that soldiers will spend a lot of time outfield doing things, sometimes in isolation to other activities, and it's often very difficult to get the bigger picture. And I often find it frustrating that we do a lot of things and people aren't aware of that. So I think it's important that we make people aware and understand that they're part of a big organisation, and we reflect and ensure that they understand that their part or their cog in the machine is just as important as other parts, and what that cog actually might deliver at the end is something they don't see. So giving them that visibility to understand what else is going on, what they have contributed to, is really important. External to Army, well, I think we offer a great opportunity for employment. We're a great national organisation, but we're not a well understood national organisation. We speak in acronyms. We do incredibly complex things that we actually do very well, but are hard to explain to people that can't comprehend how it all goes together. So it's important that we explain that and explain how we achieve things. But it's also important that the people that are paying for us to be ready understand how ready we are. And, I hope that by displaying what we do, we have an active Facebook presence. I hope that generates discussion at barbecues and so forth, that people say, wow, the Army's great. Look at all the work they do. They're always doing great work for us. They're doing complex stuff. This is something that I would like to be a part of, or I'm very happy they're doing, or this is something my daughter or my son would be a great opportunity for them to do. So that's why it's really important to tell our story. And it's amazing how many times I find people aren't aware of what we're doing. And once they are made aware, they're very proud of their Army.
And I guess when someone in our community looks at someone in the Australian Army's uniform, they're looking at someone that they can trust. They can put their trust in, having never met them before, because they have a certain expectation of how that person is going to behave. And for something that's so difficult to gain, it just seems so easy to lose. So let's switch now and talk about the things that erode trust in an organisation.
I think the reality of not being honest is a critical piece. Trying to conceal issues. Our soldiers and junior officers and junior NCOs, we are very, very lucky. We recruit and design self-starters. They are diligent.
Yeah, they work hard.
They're hardworking. They're happy to work hard. They're very happy to work hard, but they just want to understand why they're doing it. If we're not clear why we're asking them to do something, well, that starts to erode trust. And it goes back to that point I just made before. We've got to take people on a journey. They've got to make the effort to help them understand why things are getting done.
I guess, firstly, there's nothing wrong with not delivering something that you said you were going to deliver with, or something falling over, or not going the way it was planned. That doesn't mean you're not trustworthy if you don't deliver on those things. What I think will potentially ruin the relationships of trust is if it's not communicated properly. I think it's really important, close the loop, what happened, where, and identifying the reasons why, and then what you're then going to do about it. So it's just that closed loop communication, I think realistically can mend a lot of things just by being honest, open, honest about exactly it is that what happened and why you are where you are now.
It's easier said than done, right?
Absolutely. Especially for health. Like it's not a piece of equipment we're talking about. It's a life. It's someone's brother. It's somebody's partner, etc. And the flow on. It doesn't just finish there. Someone's broken their leg. They're out of the field. It's the so what. It's the trust. Hey, they're going to make their way through the medical system, all the way through to supporting them, their partner, their kid, financial welfare, the whole thing. So closing the loop in health is really important as well.
And Che, what are your thoughts on what Brigadier McCammon just said? You know, what erodes trust at your level, at the section level, at the individual level?
Lack of confidence between members, being able to be open to each other, as well as those that keep things hidden, like lie about it, just trying to cover their own shortfalls or something, rather than allowing others to give them a hand. That's the best way. And
you've got a lot of junior soldiers coming through these days, fresh out of training. They arrive at the battalion. They turn up in your section. You don't know them. You know, what are some of the things that bridge the gap between an unknown, brand new soldier in the battalion and someone who is deeply trusted as part of your team?
Just working between each other. Like even in barracks environment, it's always been, you know, talk to lads, get to know them, where are they from, if they have any issues or something like that. Have an open door policy with them, but have an understanding that, you know, there's still a job to be done, be with each other the whole way. That's the best I can do. Just try and stay linked in as much as we can.
But how do you manage readiness fatigue for soldiers who have been switched on and off so many times because the thing that we were training for, didn't come to fruition, and you got to look them in the eye and say, get back off the airfield, get back into training. How do you do it?
Yeah, so that's a hard one. I think the problem we have is we maybe G the guys up a bit too much. We get them excited. We get the call, something's going on, and we're being stood to. And I think, as part of getting them ready, they really get them G'd up. They go, this is happening. We might be going and doing this. And I think, honestly, they just need someone to look them in the eyes and go, hey, we might not be going. There's a good chance we're not going. We just need to be ready to go. Yep. It's like, it'd be like, the MPs railing up their dogs ready to go bite someone. And then, oh no, there's no one here. Yep. It's the same as soldiers, get them all excited to go over and do the job, and then they don't. It's very disappointing. So I think, and it's probably a junior officer and junior NCO level where they need to be talking to the dudes, the soldiers, and saying, hey, we're ready to go, but I guess don't get too excited.
Yeah. Because you don't want to be caught out, I guess. You don't want to be that guy or girl that didn't think it was going to happen, and then boom, you're in a foreign country.
Yeah.
You're fighting in uniform, and you weren't fully ready for it.
Exactly. So you got to find that good balance between keeping them ready, but not, exciting them and letting them down all the time. And it can be a hard thing to do.
Donald Rumsfeld once said, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you wish you have.
Yeah.
Now, you're in a unit that is transitioning to armoured infantry. You know that there's the Redback, will soon be here. It's just over the horizon, within arm's reach, but you're still operating the M113.
Yep.
So how do you approach that challenge with the soldiers rather than focusing on something that you haven't got? How do you keep them interested in just working with what they've got?
Yeah, well, that can be difficult because, like you said, they're all seeing it on the news that these Redbacks are coming, and that's where their focus is. And they I think they look at these old M113s and just think, they should be in a museum, and the kind of training aids, which is dangerous. They look at them as training aids and not the vehicles, the potential weapon of the section of the platoon and the unit. So yeah, that can be difficult, and that just comes back to the same thing of reminding them, like, hey, something could kick off tomorrow. Those Redbacks aren't going to get built any faster. You're going to be taking these overseas, so you need to stop looking at them as like a training vehicle, and look at them as this is what you're going to be fighting in.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just all about reminding them, because they do forget, and then they sit amongst themselves and they talk and get in their own heads with these kind of things. And as a NCO, you need to be the one there, kind of bring them back to earth. Like, no, like you're not going to be fighting in Redbacks, not for another 3-4 years. You're going to be fighting in these.
Yep.
Comes down to the section commander's responsibility.
So when it comes to the training priorities that you set as a brigade commander, how do you link what it is that you're doing up on exercises like the Warfighter and readiness?
Firstly, the importance of making sure everyone knows what's going on the Brigade Warfighter is important. And over the next 24 hours, we'll walk people through a bunch of activities that occurred that they may not have been part of, so they understand it. Because ultimately, when the brigade is exercising, there are peaks and troughs of time spent in the field by soldiers, because their battle group or their combat team at a point in time may not be the main effort, and therefore may not be resourced to move or do something. And now if you're a soldier in that organisation, you don't get to see what the rest of the brigade has been doing. And we've just come out of area defence, and it's a perfect example of that. If you're sitting in the forward right position of one of the battalions, it's hard to comprehend or see what the screen has done out to the front provided by the cavalry, or the amount of work the engineers have put in. So it's important that we explain those parts of the activity to the soldiers that are out there, so they understand why they were doing certain things, why they were held in certain places, in order to get the brigade plan going.
How do you instill a culture of readiness in sort of the junior soldiers to be ready for operational service?
Yeah, it can be a bit of a difficult cat to skin sometimes, I think. It's important you got to remind everyone that the world, it can be very volatile, as I think like a lot of people have kind of seen in the last few years with Russia and Ukraine, and that, overnight things can develop. And, there's plenty of stories from veterans where they were just barrack soldiers in a peacetime army, and then, 48 hours later they were stepping off a plane in a foreign country, responding to a conflict. So, you've got to, particularly with your soldiers in your section, you really got to remind them that these things can happen, and they do happen. And you've got to keep them in that mindset. And I think another one as well is back to training is you've got to keep the training consistent. So you can't, I guess you can take your foot off the pedal, a little bit tempo wise, but you can't relax. You can't let them forget, I guess, that why they're here and what they're doing. And, while they've got that skippy badge on, they are riflemen ready to go do this stuff at all times. Even in the down periods, they need to remember that is their job, and they've got to be ready all the time.
So I think it's really important to do complex, difficult training to put leaders, put people under pressure, because when those decisions are taken, they are more difficult. They get them ready for making difficult decisions in the future. And, the moral courage required when your section or your platoon is tired, or your troop is tired, but you need to achieve a task, you're under-resourced, you don't have everything you need, but you need to get something done. The moral courage required at that point in time in leadership is the moral courage required of leaders in this organisation if we deploy or are in conflict. So giving them that opportunity to show how great they can be under pressure is really, really important. And I can think back to times when I was a lieutenant, when I was a major, of being under pressure, having to show moral courage. That gives me great strength now as a brigade commander to understand the importance of taking the hard right over the easy wrong.
Yeah, so you're stress testing people in the pressure cooker now, so we get them ready for when the day comes that they've got to do it for real.
Yeah, with a framework around them, with an important framework around them of support. And then one of the great things that CTC do, and they do it incredibly well, is the TRA process or the AAR process of getting the opportunity to reflect and say, how do we do that better? And as I said before, I don't look at training outcomes of who won, who lost. That is not what I'm looking at.
Do you reckon our people genuinely feel safe to fail in this kind of training environment? Or do you think they see it as their one shot, their opportunity to prove themselves, in an exercise like a brigade warfighter?
Yeah, but you can prove yourself and fail. That's the reality of what we do, because we're not running the 400 metre, or the 100 metre. It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So you can prove yourself 9 times out of 10, and on the 10th time you fail. Doesn't mean you're a failure. It means that you have stood the pressure right up until that point, and that's conflict, and that's what happens in war. We, as an organisation, you take your hits, and it's just as important. In fact, it's more important how you respond, how you react to that point in time than when it actually occurs. So if you're on the defensive position and your pit's overrun, what's really important is how you structure, deliver orders, and generate the counterattack that's success. Okay, and so I hope, and I'd actively push people to push to that point, feel safe in the fact that that's the reality of our business and that's how we get better.
Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of the Cove podcast. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Chris Johnson, and we've been talking about trust with Brigadier Dave McCammon, Captain Rachael O'Sullivan, Corporal Connor Dawson, and Lance Corporal Che Morris. I just want to recap on a few of the key points we covered today. We talked about how to generate trust and how we can lose it. We talked about the link between people developing trust and people planning training, as well as our approach to readiness. Now, ultimately, trust is built through authenticity and through genuine relationships between people and each other and people and an organisation. Trust grows when people are exposed to challenging and well-planned training, and they're given honest and realistic expectations. People who go through shared hardships together are more likely to gain each other's trust. And if you're in a leadership position at any level in our Army, then this responsibility rests with you. It's less about forcing trust into a relationship, and it's more about creating an environment where our people can thrive. This is why the profession of arms is more than just an occupation. The trust we place in each other transcends the normal 9-to-5 workday. On operations, both domestic and abroad, and in our day-to-day business, we represent something bigger than ourselves. We represent the Army, and that means that we're given a certain level of trust the moment we put the uniform on. If you've got suggestions or ideas for the Cove podcast, please send them through my way. You can contact me via our website, cove.army.gov.au, or you can email the team, the.cove@defence.gov.au. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. We'll chat next time.